If you're looking from outside, it doesn't look like a marketer is recruited based on the writing skill. A marketer is communicating. And for that matter, most of us are communicating most of the time. If there is a webinar happening, or there is a white paper which we have published, or there is a technical video which you want to drive people towards, that piece of content is written by the field marketer, be it through an email, be it through a social media post, or be it through a LinkedIn message, which are helping the sales rep to communicate to his or her clients. All these are done by marketing people. Any piece of communication should help you to take the next action. Now, when you send an email, you are actually nudging that person to the next stage in your purchase journey. One mistake I have consistently seen marketers do is to not spend much time on the subject line. You can make your subject line more interesting. I would say that it starts with understanding about the customer. You can hire for some skills now, but tomorrow those skills may become irrelevant and I may need a different set of skills or in my team. It is impractical or not very feasible for me to go and find new people all the time. It's not economical. So how can I get the team more adaptable to these kind of situations? So I think this attitude to learn is something which I'm like really passionately digging to understand.
Sanjay, thank you very much for your time and welcome to the show.
Thank you. Pleasure is mine.
So, Sanjay, I'll just set a bit of context here. I know there is no direct correlation between writing skills and marketing that way. But based on my conversation with you, I recollect that you had mentioned that writing is an essential skill. If it is definitely not the core skill. So I wanted to understand how writing has a close correlation with marketing and how does it contribute to the success of marketing campaigns or marketing initiatives that you take in your organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're looking from outside, it doesn't look like a marketer is recruited based on the writing skill. But finally, a marketer is communicating. And for that matter, most of us are communicating most of the time. But I think we expect a lot more out of a marketer to communicate. And communicating in the current scenario or the current world is mostly do with some form of text, video, audio, and all. And all these are pretty understood forms of communication based on the channels which we use. I mean, if it's a podcast, you use audio. If it's a YouTube, then you have a video. And if it is an email or an article, then you have your text. Now, all these forms are generally in any organization are done by the marketing department. So now, yes, in some cases, you work with a technical person to get him prepared for a podcast, but finally, it's a marketing department's responsibility to get this content out through multiple channels and in multiple formats. In many cases, in my experience, even though the technical person who is working with the marketing team member is sound technically, the way the content comes out is not in a way that the audience can digest easily, can understand the message that you want to communicate. So this is where the marketing person comes in, I would say, in a very daily life. Now, in large organizations, you have marketing people who are writing content. So, for example, there are people who write the website content. There are people who write white papers. There are people who write technical papers and all those. But in my current role, when I'm leading the field marketing team, we probably are not writing content that much in terms of publishing on the website. Yes, we do web pages for attracting people to come to a webinar. But if there is a webinar happening, or there is a white paper which we have published, or there is a technical video which you want to drive people towards, that piece of content is written by the field marketer, be it through an email, be it through a social media post, or be it through a LinkedIn message, which are helping the sales rep to communicate to his or her clients. All these are done by marketing people. And now, as you know, in this era of very small attention spans, it is very important for us to communicate what we want to communicate, in a way we want to communicate, in a place we want to communicate, in very few words, because people's attention spans are less, in very few words or very few pieces of text or audio. I think that is where the marketer becomes so powerful in bridging the gap between the technical content or any type of content and making it palatable or making it discoverable for your audience, who is finally going to buy your product, and then because of that your revenues are going to grow. And now, in my journey as a marketer, yes, I have handled people who are writers, that means who write content and then publish on the website. However, that doesn't mean that unless you are a writer, you don't need to have this writing skill or communication skills. I think it's equally important. And here I just touched on the writing skills, but equally important is your communication, verbal communication skills also, because you have to convince lots of your customers as well as your internal stakeholders to do a few activities. So, so this is how I see writing as a medium and as a skill, how it becomes important for a profession like marketing.
So, Sanjay, thanks for the overview. First of all, give us an understanding of how these two are related to each other as far as the marketing world is concerned. I'm thinking from the perspective of, you said that in different larger organizations, you have writers who will write specifically content for various mediums. But if you think back about your journey when you started as a marketer, was that, and even when I'm thinking about the different mediums of communication as a marketer, digital wasn't so prevalent initially.
Right.
Digital came in later.
Right.
So, what kind of evolution have you seen in terms of marketer adapting to that kind of a world in terms of communication?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it takes me many years back. So now, as much as I can remember, and this probably goes back even before I started my career as a marketer, marketing started as typically direct marketing. When I say direct marketing, you have some kind of letters posted to your houses, you get it in your post books, you open that, you read that, hey, there's a sale happening nearby, oh, there is some event happening where you could go and get some offers. Or there is a retail store which is next to you, they are running some offers on various items. Now that happens still also. Sometimes we get it as newspaper inserts. So that's where it started. So you had to somewhere communicate in a text manner, post that in an envelope, and that goes to you. So that's how it started. Now, when it evolved and when digital medium slowly started coming in, that is when I say website started. So that's the first step, right? That you had a website. And people started visiting the websites. There was no digital marketing per se at that point of time. Then you had to write good content on your website. So if people are coming to your website, how can you help them move in what we call as sort of purchase journeys, right? People come, read about the product, and probably you ask them, hey, this is a number, please call us to book your order. So how can you persuade that person coming to the website to read, understand, and take the next action? And I think this basic principle hasn't changed. Wherever marketers are communicating so that the audience will take an action. An action may be a phone call to the sales, or action may be an email, or action may be starting the chat with the chatbot available on the website. Action may be clicking on your ad and downloading something. So the basic fundamentals remain the same. Now, as you rightly pointed out, Mova, the channels are changing and the formats are changing. So as a marketer for last like 25 years, I also had to adapt pretty much. So initially I used to probably write some emails to customers. Then when digital channels evolved, I had to write copies for the digital advertisements. So that's a different ball game, right? You don't have much space. And then there are other ads competing on the same page with you. And then when emails started becoming more and more, and now we get like hundreds of emails every day, we don't click open all the emails. So that's the biggest challenge now for the marketer, that if you are sending an email from your organization or in a personal capacity to someone, soliciting some business or asking him to take some actions, will the person even open the email? And you know that on a normal day, probably the best open rates that the marketers get is like 3%, 4%. So out of 100 emails you send, four emails are open. Now, after the email is opened, then somebody has to click on that link which you had sent or take that action. So even though the fundamentals have remain unchanged over a period of time, the mediums have changed drastically. And this could be now in the world of Instagrams and short videos. Like, how can your short videos entice an audience? And again, you want to communicate about a particular product that I'm taking as a product company. You are launching a product and you want to communicate about this new product to the audience. So you may think that, okay, this product is going to do some particular things, right? It's going to solve this particular problem, business problem for the client or challenge for a particular engineer or your target audience. And you are taking this message into multiple channels, be it like an Instagram or be it an email or be it your website or be it sharing it through social media, through LinkedIn, or even helping the sales send an email to their clients. Even though the messaging, the core value proposition you are communicating is the same, the formats you use are completely different. So because you understand the audience more better in this particular context, in terms of like the audience in your Instagram is not probably the audience who are on LinkedIn or vice versa. So now in LinkedIn, there are particular formats which the platform themselves will actually force you to do. Whereas in Instagram, there are particular formats which gets more, I would say, more virality of content. So as a marketer and from writing and communication perspective, the current challenge of the marketer is to keep up with all these kind of channels and then experimenting massively, because you know that all these channels also change their algorithms. And it is very easy for somebody to copy. The amount of information that we are subjected to really, really high. So in all this clutter, how can I get my message through and capture that attention and finally ask that person to take an action is a challenge. So my personal journey has been in that way something of constant learning. And probably we can talk a little bit more about that in terms of understanding the environment and then adapting myself and my skills to those environments. Wherever I felt that I need to build some skills, I had to build some skills. So that has been, in short, my journey from 2000s, when there was a .com burst and when people were getting into internet in a big time. And as you rightly pointed out, digital marketing at its infancy to now, that is the marketing which you are seeing around us. I mean, there is hardly any direct mailers you get in your post box, at least in India. I mean, it's still a big thing in US, but at least in India.
That's true. Now, India is more digital savvy, I would say, that
Absolutely.
way. Yeah. So, Sanjay, based on the answer that you gave right now, what I am kind of seeing is there the lines between copywriting and the marketing personnel, or the kind of work that you all are doing, is that somewhere getting blurred? It's looking like a lot of overlap is there.
Yeah, I mean, good question. So I see everything as a copy. I mean, if I'm writing, I see everything as a copy. So you may think that, I mean, traditionally, what we know as copywriting is generally copywriting for an advertisement. It has to be very small, or like very less number of words and all those. But I see everything as a copy, and you are writing it to communicate. And as we mentioned just now about this very reduced attention span of all of us, including me, myself at least. So then your copy has to be really sharp. Copy has to be really sharp. Nobody has got the time to read a 1,200-word white paper. They may read it, but there should be something leading that person to that 1,200 word. And that is not going to be an 800-word email. That may be probably a one paragraph short email, or even a small post, or even something he or she sees in the digital platform. And now I personally feel that there is large amount of, I would not say overlap, but the skill is required in all the spheres. It's not just for the advertiser. Skill is required for the marketer. And I think the better that person is in copywriting, the better that person can communicate. And I'll give you probably one practical example here. we talked about the email earlier, right? You send an email and we want, the first thing we want the email to do is that email has to be delivered. So that means I got the right address of MOVA, the email got delivered. So that's my first barrier. Okay, yes, that's done. So now so I know that the email got delivered to MOVA because it didn't reply back with an undelivered message. Now the next thing is that for MOVA to open that email. So for me, there are two reasons why you will open my email. One, you know me. You know me as probably know me, and you think that, or rather, you believe that I don't like spam you big time. So you know the Sanjay's mail has come, I will open that. The next reason is the subject line or the small text you will see along with the subject line. And typically the subject lines, if the subject line is long, it gets cut because of your email engine. And majority of these things now we are seeing in a mobile. That again another layer of challenge. So it's not just the format, it's a device also dictating how we write. Now in the mobile, if you're reading, you may just see say maximum 40-50 characters before you decide. And it's like a minute second you have before you decide whether I'm going to click on that email to open that. Now, isn't that copywriting? And this email is done by a marketing person in my team. So isn't that copy? It is copywriting. It is copywriting. You may have the most beautiful content inside, most beautiful, very relevant thing for MOVA inside the email. But if your subject doesn't capture MOVA's attention, that's lost. And that lost forever. Yeah, if I don't get MOVA's attention in that split second, I mean, you are not going to visit that email after 5 days. Hey, let me see what emails I have to caught up. So because there is already a list of emails you have to catch up. So to your question, coming back to that, yes, that is copywriting for me. So you are right, even though I might call it not overlapping, but a marketer has to be a copywriter in current world.
So if I see the role of a marketer, it's basically someone who is able to write well. I see that now as a very essential skill, really an important skill to have for to be a successful marketer. And then obviously you should be able to communicate in-person communication, which a copywriter will never need to do.
Correct. Absolutely. You are right. Yeah, there is a lot of other forms of communication, as we all know, which we have to do. But fortunately or unfortunately, large amount of communication we do are by writing, at least to the external audience.
And yes, the initial mode of trying to get attention is through writing.
Absolutely.
Like even if you want an in-person meeting, first thing is you will have to approach that person through writing. Yes.
Very right, very right. And one more point probably which is relevant here is as marketing team members, we also work with sales. I mean, needless to say, very, very closely, especially the field sales, because I form the part of this field marketing team. Now there also, we work very closely with the sales to help them write and communicate. And I can loosely put as sales enablement. Now, again, many of these email clients will have their own restrictions in terms of number of characters or number of words which can have in an email. So how do you communicate that? Again, the same thing which we talked about the email, right? How do you communicate and get to the next action in those like 60 words you have or 250 characters you have? Yeah, that becomes challenging. And even if you're doing a video, there has to be some amount of narration there, some amount of text there, which has to be spoken by somebody or as a voiceover it comes, right? So it's not just visual. So text is still important. Of course, there is nothing to belittle visuals. So this written form of communication in the form of text is very relevant in a marketer's life.
Sanjay, the next question that I have based on all the conversations that we had right now is like, if you think about digital marketing now, email marketing forms a very important part of the entire digital marketing chain that way. So, and there are many people who are basically earning a lot by actually promoting digital marketing. Sorry, the email marketing part of it, how to write good emails and how do you get attention of your customers. So do you want to highlight anything, any strategies that you use for writing good copies, which could be email marketing as well as other channels of communication?
Yeah, sure, sure. So I mean, these are not silver bullets, obviously, but some basic principles I can share, and we probably talked about that a little bit earlier also. So for me, the email, for that matter, any piece of communication should help you to take the next action. The next action in a B2B scenario may not be buying the product. In a B2C scenario, it could be a click here to buy my product. But in B2B scenario, you know that our buying cycles are longer, and the person is probably, in many cases, he will not click and say $100,000 worth of B2B service. They're not going to buy it. But we should be able to move him or her further in what we call as a purchase journey. Now, when you send an email, you are actually nudging that person to the next stage in your purchase journey. So it start again with, okay, now the email got delivered. I'll not go into that part because we talked about that. The email got delivered, and then you have the subject line as a key hook for you to get the person to open the email. One mistake I have consistently seen marketers do is to not spend much time on the subject line. I think that is the first thing you will have to crack the subject line. And you can read about that 70 characters less and all those. Of course, I'm not suggesting that you do a clickbait kind of thing and you talk about something and you have something inside, but you can make your subject line more interesting. And again, there is no magic wand here to do the subject line more interesting, but I would say that it starts with understanding about the customer, or what is the language that the customer uses. Can we write in that language? Can we talk to that audience in a language that the audience understands? You may think it's very commonsensical, but many cases, in my experience, I've not seen people adhering to these very basic principles. And then can we connect to the audience and emotionally rather than just trying to talk a lot more about the features? So for example, and I'm again, looks like it's straying into the B2B field. There's a tendency for us to, in the B2B marketing, to talk a lot more about, hey, this is a feature you have, it's a cool feature, you can do this with that and all those. But I think, I mean, that comes later. Obviously, people have to use a feature, but there is a business problem you are trying to solve. And can you talk about that problem which this feature may solve or may address in your initial communication? We'll get to that later, but initial communication. So subject line, keep it less than, I think, 60 to 70 characters less, and make sure that it leads that person to open that email. That's the only purpose of the subject line. He should open. Now, then you concentrate on your text. And again, one more thing in the text is people write long emails. Many people give like 5, 6 links in those emails. So now again, our email clients becoming smarter and smarter. There are more chances of these emails getting branded as spam or spamish, and then you get into the spam folder, which none of us will open. Or yeah, look at Google, right? I mean, like very rarely we go outside the primary folder to open those emails. So assuming that you are using the right email engine to send emails, I think that you will have to write in a very personalized manner these emails to get the attention of the people. So once you have the subject line good and the person opens the email, quickly get to the subject and take him to the next action. What you want to do? Is it like fix up a time with the person, or is it asking him to click on something and then read something? But you need to quickly get into that action as you communicate what is the value you are going to give. And this worked for me. This worked for me personally also in multiple platforms like LinkedIn. Personally, when I started off, I used to write a lot of these emails to CEOs of technology companies, and this is way back. And I used to write like personal emails. I did some kind of research, understood what they are trying to do, and then connect to that. So that personal connect is there rather than, hey, this is what I have to say. So that another mistake we do, right? Okay, this is what I have to say. Yeah, call me if you need more information. Rather than looking for them, why should that person be interested in your product? What is the problem your product can solve or your service can solve for him? These are all the things which I told are pretty basic, pretty commonsensical. But many a times in our own journey to tell a lot more of what we got to say, we forget all these things, and then we have standard template. So now another small thing which people don't put sufficient importance to is that if you're sending a monthly newsletter, Now you are sending a newsletter, you can call it the February newsletter, then you call it the March, April, and all this. Now, yeah, I know something comes in February is a February newsletter. So now, do you need to use that real estate space to say it's a February newsletter, or can you just give them a glimpse of what's inside there? Probably your top story, which is your hook to get the person to open, rather than volume 1, 2, 3 February. So still people do that. Now, unless I know the person who is sending it and I know that the person is really good, even though he does this thing, then I will not open. So, and we are frantically trying to get attention. So we'll have to use every small bit of real estate to grab that. And you see that, and again, I'm underlining this importance of subject line because people often miss this very important part. But unless you get through that door, your beautiful museum space is not seen. So you have to help them get through the road. You have to make them get through the road, come inside through the road.
Yeah, you said it's very commonsensical, but I realize it is, people miss that. See, this is also very relevant when people are writing to others for job opportunities. There are many people who write to others that, okay, I'm seeking this kind of a position. So there also, this whole thing is very, very relevant, whether that organization is looking for a specific skill set or not, and then you're proposing yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to the point, I mean, sorry to just come back to that point. I mean, something really struck me. This from my management days. One of my professors who taught me, it's like long back, he told that marketing is all about common sense, but that common sense is not very common. So yeah, that's what we are talking about, right? And he told that like 25 years back, and I quote and often quote this again and again because still I feel that common sense is missing in many of our spheres.
Okay. So, Sanjay, moving on to the next part, you have been in different spaces, I believe, right? In different types of industries, also, in a way.
Yeah.
So, if we can put some examples around the different kind of domains that you have worked. So, any specific skill sets you look for when you are hiring a fresher, maybe for those different domains?
Yeah, sure. So again, there's a lot of learning I had over a period of time in hiring too, right? So it's how Sanjay hired 10 years back is not how I hire now. And of course, and I'm sure that I'm still learning. Now, in the various industries, I think when you hire for marketing in various industries, I will still see that there is not much of difference when you hire for, I mean, that function. And I can explain why I say that. But when you hire for a different functions inside marketing, there may be some difference. So for example, if I'm hiring somebody to do writing for me, he's going to capture the client references and make me like really good stories, and then which are going to be published on my website or which are going to be part of a collateral. Vis-a-vis, I am going to get one person who is going to drive my integrated marketing campaigns. I will see skills at different varied levels. Like the first person, I would need him to have like really good writing skills. The next person, I think that, okay, yes, he or she need not be the best writer, but there are some other skills that person need to have. So at a very basic level, when I'm hiring fresher, I'm looking at the right attitude. And when I say right attitude, an attitude to learn, an attitude to be ready to hear feedback, listen to feedback, and then improve. An attitude to solve problems rather than be a part of the problem. So I check these things, and I can go a little bit deeper into the learning part. One of the questions which I typically ask, and I ask, it's not just for the freshers, but I ask other people also, is tell me something which you have learned recently outside your work or outside your studies. I mean, fresher means studies, right? So nowadays, the new generation kids are like really smart. They have done like several courses outside. Hey, Sanjay, I have done this in Coursera. It may be a hobby. It may be just a hobby. But I find that there is a constant curiosity in that person to learn. And I think that's important. And more, you asked me that earlier question, right? Okay, your career has spanned a lot of years, and then digital marketing was practically not there when you started. And I think I can confidently say it's that curiosity that helped me grow, that helped me be relevant, and helped me sitting here and then talking to you. And I have no doubt that things are going to change very fast, faster than what I faced 20 years back now. So unless you have this curiosity to learn and the ability to adapt to the situations on what skills are required at that point of time, you'll be obsolete. So I can hire for some skills now, but tomorrow those skills may become irrelevant and I may need a different set of skills or in my team. It is impractical or not very feasible for me to go and find new people all the time. It's not economical, it's not right. So how can I get the team more adaptable to these kind of situations, and they learn and then they grow? So I think this attitude to learn is something which I'm like really passionately digging to understand. And then obviously, if you're a fresher, then I try to check the communication part of it. But again, I feel the technical skills in most cases, especially for a fresher, that can be taught. I mean, we are not sending rockets to moon. This can be taught. So I'm not too worried about the technical skills. Of course, I check a little bit in terms of their understanding of things around them and all those, but I'm mostly focused on the attitude that the person brings to table. Now, in industry wise, at a fresher level, I don't expect the person to understand the industry, what's the landscape. But again, the curiosity to learn, if she has got the curiosity to learn, I'm sure that she will understand this. This is a matter of time. Yeah. So I hope that I answered that question.
Yeah. So, Sanjay, again, since you'll be recruiting for marketing skills, not really writing. Writing
Yeah.
is an essential skill, but
Yeah.
so how do you evaluate somebody is a good fit for a marketing kind of a profile?
More recently, I haven't asked people to write anything, but there was one point in time in my career when I was recruiting writers, I used to ask them to write something and then also to give me some samples of their writing and all, which is like basic checks. Sometimes I ask them, hey, have you written something outside? So they may have some blogs, they may have some, I mean, nowadays everybody got an Instagram handle. Some of them don't want to share, that's fine. But I asked for some publicly available text from their side or publicly available pieces of communication from their side. It may be a report, it may be a project report. And then that gives me some understanding about the person's writing skills. Again, I'm not looking at a perfect communicator at that level, but basically, I don't want to teach grammar at that level, right? I won't spend that. Obviously, we all make our own small grammatical errors, but we don't want to probably teach tense and all those kind of things at that level. And I have not found anyone who lack that skill at that particular level. But if you're writing for a more if you're recruiting for a very specific writing skills, then I would strongly suggest that you should have some kind of a test to assess that person, which is very live. And yeah, for marketing, you asked me. So I had to at one time I had to analyze data analytics skills. So like we talk about the writing, data analytics is also a very important skill which a marketer should have. So you have lots of data coming in, internal and external data, and you should be able to make sense of that. So I used to create some kind of dummy exercises with some dummy data. And then I used to send it and say, the next 12 hours, analyze this and give me some insights you get or what actions you take. Again, they don't have the much of a context like I have, right? Because I'm living here and which I completely understand. So I'm not expecting them to come back to me with really these are the exact things which you'll do, but I'm checking their thought process. And sometimes I ask them to think aloud with me in the interview to see whether the thought process is in the right direction. Are they logically thinking? Yeah, so these are probably some of the things which I do, apart from typical interview questions and all those. So at a fresher level, less on technical skills, more on the attitude. Again, at all levels, I check for attitude. But if you're somebody with some years of experience, I expect you to also have done some projects outside and able to share what are the outcomes you have achieved.
Outcomes you have achieved. Yeah. So that at a mid-career level, you'll be able to show some
That's
results that you have been able to drive.
right.
Yeah. So, Sanjay, coming back to freshers again, at an entry level position, let's say you have hired somebody at an entry level position. So, what would you expect him or her to do as a like an entry level person in your organization? Not
Yeah,
just current organization. I'm
correct,
asking thinking
correct,
through.
correct, correct, correct. Yeah. So I will probably give you two scenarios. One is probably you are, I mean, like I'm a marketing manager and I have a very small team and I took this person and I've got like two, three people in that team. So I would like that person to be productive in a very short time. But I think as a manager, it is your responsibility to give them adequate time to ramp up, adequate time to support. So I give a lot of support to people who come into my organization to make sure that they are successful. So we are in a journey together. I have recruited you, and it's my responsibility to make you successful. So I tell that to myself. So I will give all the environment possible, all the skills, all those resources at your disposal to make you successful. So typically what I try to do with freshers is to, before they get and then get into their regular job, which they're supposed to do, they give them some small projects or ask them to shadow some of the other senior folks, make them attend meetings with me to understand how things happens around. Because there's a certain amount of business acumen required for you to perform in organizations. So you need to understand one, what's the business landscape? To some extent, of course, we are all learning some. So when you sit in different meetings, when you start talking to different people in multiple departments, then you start getting, okay, yeah, this is our target audience. This is the market we are addressing. These are some of the challenges. And again, you speak to three salespeople, the challenges will be different. So you understand that and you come out with your own idea about how things are. And then also the internal, what I call it, the internal office politics. And this is not in a bad way. I mean, I'm not taking politics in a bad way, but understand the influences different people are having in different parts of the organization, because you are finally trying to make some change in the organization while you work, right? And then to make those changes, you need to understand who to work with in the organization to make those changes. How can I make these changes more, I would say, impactful? So you understand. So that's why you understand the business, the organizational acumen also comes in. So the initial, at least 3-4 months, I help the person get and dirty their hands into some of these kinds of things, understand the organization more, understand the industry more, and then slowly give them some small projects for them to work on before I get them into the real job. So by this time, the person would have also spoken to those particular stakeholders who he or she may be working in, so that they are also aware that, hey, there is a new person who is going to help us. She is now going through the training. And this, in addition to any large organization, will have their own sets of training and coaching and all those required, all those given about organization values, organization structures, and all those. So I guess in the first few months for a fresher, I hope the manager is good enough to give them the time to ramp up. Because I've heard stories about somewhere the freshers are really kind of dumped into the work and they just lose their way. And sometimes, unfortunately, managers also don't understand that once upon a time they were also a fresher, not understanding what is happening inside this corporate, because they just came from a college to a corporate where they probably also don't know in many cases how to behave. And now this happened very much during this COVID time, right? When there was a lot of freshers who entered the workforce during the COVID time. And because it was COVID, everything was virtual. They just don't know how an office is like and how an office performs in a normal day. And when everything moved back to the physical space, it was a struggle for many managers. So it is important that the managers give time. And for the employee who is a fresher, it's important that have very consistent communication with the manager and set the expectations very clear both sides on what is expected out of me in the next 2-3 months, so that there are no unclear expectations from the manager, and then as you as a fresher, you think that, okay, this is what I have to achieve, and the manager thinks that no, I think that you should have achieved this outcome by this time. So that is very important. So there should be more communication. Of course, communication has to be there always, but more communication probably at an early stage of the career. Both sides. It's not the onus of just the fresher, but the employee also should take more time to do that extra bit of communication while he or she picks up the skill.
So just to summarize here, as a fresher, once you have joined, so try to understand the organizational culture, try to understand the kind of influences different functions or departments have, and how you're interacting with different functions to maybe create a message for the sales team.
Right.
Basically, there's a lot of interaction is what I'm understanding.
Right.
With different departments, and maybe have a understanding of power dynamics, who is maybe influences, so has a better or the final say, I will, for any decision making. Figure those out.
Yeah.
Those will be important. And one is that, and then also understand from the customer perspective, what's the landscape there, the marketing landscape, basically.
Yeah.
So that is what you need to understand, and along with it, keep honing your skills in terms of.
Yeah, one thing maybe I missed that is it is essential for anybody coming into an organization at any level to understand how he or she contributes to that organization. So when you are in a function like marketing, it becomes a little bit tricky. Say in sales, I come in, I look after this territory, I'm supposed to bring in 100 million of revenue in a year. Like very clear, right? I mean, at least very clear in that sense. But when you're coming in marketing, sometimes these are not very measurable, very quantifiable. And assume that you are a writer, you are writing technical papers, working with the SMEs. Now, you may write the paper, somebody will publish it on the website. We just don't know, or rather, I as a writer just don't know what happened. Like, are people reading it? After people reading it, are they kind of purchasing our product? Are they happy about that? So, and I've seen in large organizations, many people from my function, which is marketing, getting lost in that because they just don't know what am I contributing? What's the outcome of mine, which is helping this organization grow? So it will be good when you are young in the organization itself to kind of clarify that. Okay, now how do I contribute? And it's manager's responsibility to clarify that. And then ask the right questions so that you understand your impact in the organization. And that will help you align with the organization goals. I think that's one point which I missed in my earlier answer.
And that's a very important aspect, even at any level of your career, I would say, because
Absolutely.
when you move from organization to organization, there are different expectations. So it's better to clarify what are the expectations and align yourself accordingly.
You're right.
So, Sanjay, moving on to the next question, which we have discussed a lot about freshers. Now, if we move to mid-career segment, so how do you think, what kind of changes are expected, or what kind of skill expectations or otherwise outcome expectations are there from them?
Yes, at a mid-career level, I would expect the person to ramp up faster because the person has got a context about the function, has a context about mostly industry also. And the person has been exposed to corporate life. So the person understands how corporates work typically. So I would expect that the person ramps up faster. Obviously, there is a ramping time at any level, but I expect the person to ramp up faster. I expect the person to have more, I would say, advanced strategic thinking abilities. When I say strategic thinking abilities, the ability to think a little bit beyond today and then decide what actions need to take rather than, okay, I'm going to run a campaign today. Can the person say that, hey, Sanjay, I see this particular segment in our customer base not very strong. We don't have too many of these personas in our database. and like proactively figuring this out rather than it comes in as a problem later on, right? So proactively figuring this out and then coming back with a strategy. Okay, this is how we are going to address this. This is how we are going to make sure that our messages reaches this persona and we get more and more of this persona interacting with us. This could be a persona, this could be a market segment. So for example, few years back when electric two-wheeler industry was practically non-existent in India, and there were some early starters to this, it was important for our company to understand, okay, this is going to be an interesting segment. And then put this in perspective, right? The governmental policies which are actually helping this particular industry, plus there is a lot of interest in people to go to EV basically based on your increasing petrol cost or your view about a sustainable future. So you as a mid-career professional should understand this a little bit better than a starter in your organization. So once you have that, again, don't leave it there. So once you kind of put all this into a kind of solving some kind of jigsaw puzzle and say, hey, because of this, now we should probably run a campaign addressing this. So, and then mobilize the people inside to run the campaign, because you will have to sell that. I mean, I'm putting sell and market inside because not many people would have seen it. So you are probably the first person to spot it. And just because you know that it is important doesn't mean that other people are buying into it. So you will have to kind of sell that internally. Why? Because you need their help in running the campaign. It's not a one-man show or a one-woman show. So you need their help. So these are some of the things which I expect at a mid-career level. Obviously, this comes, needless to say that the skills which are required here are leadership, project management skills, in addition to a little bit more of market research understanding and all those kind of things. And I'm also expecting this mid-career person to be a coach and mentor to some of the junior people. So you have come through this, you got like a few years of solid experience behind you. Then I think you should be able to help and mentor some of the junior members in the team.
Okay, so Sanjay, I'm going back to one of the questions that I asked earlier, and it's a very basic question again. So I had asked you a question around copywriting and marketing. There seems to be some overlap.
Yeah.
So now, if I come back there again, how would you distinguish like the job of a copywriting or advertising agency versus a marketing department in an organization? So what are the distinctions?
Yeah, sure. For an advertising agency, I see that their window to the customer is through the marketing department. So an advertising agency typically, in many cases, they serve multiple clients across multiple industries. So they, in many cases, they are just engaged case-to-case basis. Hey, I need to have this product launch, and then can you help me with some advertisements or some kind of marketing messages. Now, they may not have the time and energy to understand and find out what are some of the customer insights which we could portray in our advertisements. In some cases, yes, you engage with those advertisement agency on a long run and then try to understand this. But I think those cases are becoming lesser and less and less. Now, so there are some smart advertisers, and of course, there are stories about it and how they got these insights from the customer to come out with those messaging. I generally, in this current time, I feel that the marketer, in this case, the marketer inside the organization, inside the corporate organization, need to have a very solid understanding about the customer. And again, it is about, okay, when I'm launching this product, what would appeal to that person, my customer or a would-be customer about this particular product, rather than just the features of this product. Unfortunately, many of the advertisements we still see are just based on features. They are trying to sell the features, but there are some good advertisements which try to sell based on like probably the functionalities that is happening, and also in a very relatable way. So now copywriting for a marketing person is mostly to, I would say, client-facing more one-to-one or one-to-few, one-to-many communication. Whereas the advertisement person's copyright is a little bit, I would say, broader, much broader than a marketing person. Now, there is copywriting and digital advertisements also. So that's also one more nuance to it. But it is usually towards a very large audience, whereas the marketing communication is sometimes one-on-one, sometimes one-to-few. There are cases where it's one-to-many, but it is something like a newsletter and all those. But in some cases, the newsletters are also handled by external agencies. So I mean, I would probably think that's kind of the variation which I am seeing. There are very rare cases where somebody will engage with an advertisement agency. I need to send this email. No. So the advertisement agency may come back with a tagline which you could use, but how you use it in your communication, in your wider communication, one-on-one communications, is probably the marketer's job. Want to understand that and to help. So the marketer also gives a lot of information about the customer to this advertisement agency or an agency for them to craft the message. To give a lot of inputs. Once the agency craft that message, which is for public consumption at a very large scale, then to adapt that message into multiple channels is probably a marketer's job. Again, there could be a few channels which are handled by your digital marketing agency or your advertisement agency, but generally, I think there are many channels still left for the marketer to use his copyright skills.
And about sales enablement,
Yeah.
is that a clear distinction that
That's a
marketing?
You are right. So I don't think we engage with agencies, or rather marketing teams engage with agencies to do sales enablement. So usually it is internal function. In some organizations, there is very clearly identified sales enablement teams. But in many organizations, that is a function under marketing. When I say sales enablement, it could be internal salespeople enabling them. It could be partners or a channel partners, or resellers or a distributor who is selling for them. So help them sell more. So that's also in many cases marketing responsibility. Depends on organization to organization, but you are right. It's a very good point that it is probably in the domain of marketing to handle that than an external agency.
Yeah, they will not get into the internal matters of the things. Yeah. And another part could be, which again I'm thinking aloud, is that maybe a one-to-one, I'm sure marketing team, where as part of sales enablement, you have a lot of one-to-one communication with clients where you are presenting what your company organization does, or maybe all the storytelling that you build around the products or services that you offer as an organization, that will never come from a digital marketing agency, I believe.
That you are right. You are right.
Okay. So now I think the distinction between marketing versus digital marketing agency and advertising agency should be clear.
Yeah, so let's be very honest. So this again depends on organized to organized. Sometimes some companies do everything inside. Some companies just outsource this. In some companies, these are all handled. The digital marketing may be a centralized function. And then there are field marketing people who work with the digital marketing centralized function to run the campaign. So it all depends on scale of the organization and how the organization is structured. Yeah.
So now moving on to senior. So when you're moving from a mid-career to senior professional, senior marketing professional, so what do you think is the change or the transition that you need to bring about in yourself to be able to take on senior positions?
So at a senior position, I think in any function, it's more about the leadership capabilities. Of course, your technical capabilities are good. That got you here. But from here onwards, I think it is more of those leadership capabilities which will help you grow, not much of technical capabilities. It's good that you're technical, but even if you are technical and you are the best in the field, you may not have the time and bandwidth to do the work. So how do you coach and mentor the team to do more and do the right way, do very efficiently is probably the biggest challenge of any leader. So I think that I would say the first thing a leader should do is to set the vision for the team. Again, if I'm a marketing leader in an organization and there are people reporting to me, be it freshers or be it mid-career people, and we talked about this earlier about helping them understand how we fit into the organization, how individually we contribute to the outcomes of the organization, how collectively we contribute as a function to the organization. What's our vision for the marketing team? Where are we trying to get to? These are all the things which a leader should, as a senior person, a leader should communicate and consistently communicate and motivate people. So there is a lot of inspiration and motivation that people need in any organization. Of course, needless to say, should be a great problem solver and a person who commands the seat at the table with other senior managers. So for example, as a senior leader who leads marketing in the organization, I need to earn the respect and trust of my peers, which are like head of sales, head of probably technical sales, head of finance and allied functions. Why? Because if I am unable to get their trust, then I will not be able to represent my team's interest at a higher level. And that affects the morale of the team. I will not be able to gain that seat at the table, as they literally say, right? And then drive some of the strategies of the organization. And this happened at least in some of my organizations, my prior organizations, where marketing in some cases at least were not getting that seat at the table. And I could see the impact downstream on the team and the team members' morale when this happened. So it's important that I collaborate well and then I influence a lot more of people, senior people in the organization beyond my function. And of course, be a mentor, be a coach. But then I think it is also my responsibility to start understanding some of the standard practices as the organization grows. Like, say, for example, if the team is like 15-member team, now there will be a team member A who is doing campaigns in a particular way. Then there's a team member C who is doing campaigns in a particular way. Is C reinventing the same thing which A did? So can I as a leader be the facilitator in making sure that the best practices are shared amongst these people so that we don't reinvent the wheel? We work as a team with some standard processes. Documentation is important in the stage, so that we grow our collective intelligence rather than individually people are trying to be brilliant. Of course, individually people are good, but collective intelligence, we can propel them to higher levels. Yeah, so these are probably some of the things which I would think through. So in nutshell, I'm looking probably at the strategic thinker, a problem solver, a very collaborative leader, very influential leader in the senior management. Of course, not to say that to do all these things, he should have some capabilities like storytelling, should be very creative, and should be very result oriented, and a leadership which is built on trust and transparency.
Fine. Thank you so much, Sanjay. We'll close the session today with this. And that brings us to the end of this insightful conversation with Sanjay Gopinath. We discussed the close correlation between writing and marketing, the evolution of digital marketing, and the blurring lines between copywriting and marketing roles. Sanjay shared strategies for capturing customer attention, the skills he looks for when hiring freshers, and the expectations for different career stages in marketing. A big thank you to Sanjay for his valuable insights. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a comment, and share it with others. Stay tuned for part 2, where we will explore more strategies and insights from Sanjay. Thank you for listening, and until next time, keep learning and crafting your career.